Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. IRS Free File can help people who aren't required to file find tax credits and get a refund. COVID tax tip 2021-57, April 27, 2021. The IRS urges low and moderate income individuals and families, especially those who don't normally file a tax return because they are not required to by law, to use IRS Free File. There's a link to the IRS Free File here. So note there's two questions here when you're thinking about whether or not you should or need to file. One is, do you need to file? Two, will it be beneficial for you to file? Those are two completely different questions. If you ask the IRS and look up whether you are required to file, then you may well get the answer of no if your income is below a certain threshold. That basically means the IRS isn't going to basically kind of come after you, because the IRS doesn't have a problem if you don't file if your income is below a certain threshold, because you're not going to owe any taxes due to the fact usually of your income being below the standard deduction, and therefore, no taxes owed at that point in time. But that's a different question as to whether or not you would benefit from filing. There's many, like what they call refundable tax credits, that you might be available to you. And if you had any withholdings at all, then you might have the ability to pick those up as well. And then, of course, we have this economic impact payment type of situation this year that could have an impact as well. So let's go through those real quick. If you worked anywhere and you had W-2 income, then they probably took some of your money and gave it to the government. So even if your income threshold is low, that would mean that you wouldn't owe any taxes, but you paid taxes because you gave money to the government in the form of withholdings. That money, if you don't owe any taxes, would be refunded to you. Now you might say, well, that money's small. It's not a lot of money because I didn't work that much, so they didn't withhold that much. And that might be the case, but it might be worth checking out because you have the Free File software to check it out, so it might be worth doing. Also, you might be able to pick up the refundable credits. These are credits that typically would be applicable even if your tax is basically zero. So even if you owe no taxes, you might still have what they call a refund, quote, refund, end quote, which is really kind of a benefit program at that point, because you're not really paying taxes, you're getting a benefit at that time. But those are what they call the refundable tax credits, and those big ones are going to be the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. So, or possibly part of a child tax credit, the refundable portion. So if you have the earned income tax credit, that means that one's a little bit confusing to consider. That means if you worked somewhere, even if you did a little bit of work, then you may be qualified for a credit, and you still might get a credit bigger than the amount of withholdings that you took in. That credit could be there even if you don't have any dependents, but it goes up typically if you have 0 to 1 to 3 children, and then as dependents qualifying children for the credit. So it's actually somewhat of a complicated credit to figure out. There's a lot of kind of things involved with it. So if you qualify for that, though, you can use the IRS software to help you to file for that. Not the IRS Free File, which will take you to third-party software, which can really help you to pick those up. Also, if you didn't get the economic impact payments, then for round 1 and round 2, you could file for the recovery rebate credit. And if you didn't get the third one, then simply filing the tax return should give the IRS the information to give the prepayment to give that third one out as well. So the IRS Free File is here. There's a link to it here. There'll be a link to this in the description. This will basically give you a list of free file options from third-party tax softwares like a TurboTax and whatnot that give a free file option to you, help you to sort out which one would be beneficial, and then take you to that third-party software where you could basically, work there and fill out the tax returns, hopefully. So filing a tax return is the only way for taxpayers to claim a refund or claim benefits like the recovery rebate credit and earned income tax credit. Taxpayers who are not required to file should still consider doing so to get money they are due. IRS Free File allows people to prepare their own federal tax returns online, e-file, and get a refund. All individuals have until May 17th to file a 2020 federal tax return or request an extension to October 15th to file their return, which can also be done using Free File. So note that it looks to me like the IRS is kind of pressuring the third-party softwares to allow a Free File option if income is below a certain threshold, especially to pick up these tax returns for people that haven't been able to get the economic impact payments and so on and so forth. I'm not sure if that Free File is available for prior years, but it's really worthwhile to take advantage of it and look at it this year and see what happens. So for example, if you're not sure if you benefit at all from filing, use the free file and see if you would, and then possibly think about, well, would I have benefited last year as well? Because if you didn't file last year, you might have benefited from that too. You might not have access to the software, but it might be worthwhile if you discover that you qualify for an earned income tax credit or a child tax credit, and you have money that you have paid that you should get refunded, that it would be worthwhile to pay for the software for the prior year or have someone help you get that done. Also note that if you're looking into prior years, whether or not you should do that, you might question whether or not you have the information to do so, meaning, do I have the W-2s still, the 1099s? If you don't, and you might be saying, I don't want to go back to my prior employer, I don't work there anymore, I don't want to, deal with that, then you could possibly get that information from the IRS website. Remember that all the information that is going to you, W-2s, 1099s, the economic impact payments, of course, are coming directly from the government. The IRS has them too. They got sent to the IRS too. So you could go there for assistance to get the documentation you may need to fill out the tax return. So back to the text, Free File offers free access to brand name tax software to anyone who makes $72,000 or less. There are 9 Free File products in English and 1 in Spanish. In addition, MilTax or MilTax, there's a link to MilTax, is available free through December through the Department of Defense. So the MilTax is free to military members. Note, I'm not sure if, I believe that the $72,000 limit, if you earned less than the $72,000 limit or have taxable income less than that more of the software might be available to members of the military as well in that condition as well. I'm not sure on that, but I believe that's the case. And if you're in a situation where you're saying, I have access to free brand name software like a TurboTax or access to the MilTax, I'm not sure which one would be better. Clearly, the MilTax is geared towards military members, which do have special needs for it, but it's not like a market software, I don't believe, whereas like a TurboTax, some of these market softwares have kind of been proven on the market. They beat out competition on the market. So I would think that their kind of interview process might be, as good because they're winning on the market. Whereas, and that might not be the MilTax might be completely, as good as that as well, but I'm not sure about that. So if you could get free options to either the software over here, like a brand name software that's a market software, or the MilTax, I'm not sure which would be better. I do believe the brand name software has the necessary tools to pick up the needs for military members, although you got to make sure that you're going through the interview process to do that. And putting that in properly, whereas the MilTax might make some of those special areas more apparent. So I'd be interested if anybody has any kind of comments on that, on which would be better if you could get both of them for free. So in any case, those options are there. It offers a similar online tax preparation service to members of the military. The Free File program provides low and moderate income families, individuals like students, who are now on their own, people who are homeless, and others a fast and easy way to claim valuable tax benefits. All anyone needs to use the software is access to a computer or a smartphone. So you can't even do it on your smartphone. So if you're just trying to get access to the economic impact payment or something like that, you can actually do it, on the phone, apparently. I haven't done it on my phone, but you could do that, apparently. So IRS Free File is a free way to claim the full amount of tax benefits, including the 2020 Recovery Rebate Credit, and ensure that eligible people get their refund. People can visit irs.gov for details about claiming the 2020 Recovery Rebate Credit. If they aren't required to file a tax return, there's a link to that here. They should look for a Free File product with, quote, no minimum income, end quote, file electronically and choose direct deposit to get their money quickly. Also note that if you're using this Free File software, make sure that you're picking up Free File software that if you have a state need, meaning file state taxes too, make sure you're picking one up that you can file the state taxes. Many of them have that option, but just make sure that they do. And make sure that they do have the option to pick up the Earned Income Tax Credit if you're looking into that as well. So Free File is a great way to get other tax benefits like the Earned Income Tax Credit and the additional child tax credit. Low and moderate income individuals, also working families who don't normally file a return, should consider filing to claim these credits. Historically, many of these families missed out on the earned income tax credit and additional child tax credit because they don't file. Under a special COVID-related rule, people who had reduced income or were laid off during part of 2020 often still qualify for these benefits. So note there's some special rules for 2020. So these credits are actually quite complicated, even though they're geared towards lower income individuals, which typically should have an easier return. So because they have this refundable portion to them and whatnot, and there's a higher risk of fraud on the IRS side, and the earned income credit has earned income and it's tied to dependents and whatnot. So they're actually fairly complicated to calculate. But if you use the tax software, and they're even more complicated this year because they've made more changes due to the pandemic and tried to make them more accessible in some ways, but that made them more complicated. So the tax software can really help to kind of fill those things out. The earned income tax credit in particular, the tax software should give you that interview type of process to help you to fill it out properly and get the proper amount there. So if they worked during 2019, they could choose to use their 2019 income to figure these credits if it were higher than the 2020 earned income. Now, this is the funny component right here. So the earned income tax credit, you have to have some income in order to get it because they want to give it. They don't want to disincentivize people from working. In other words, many benefit programs are given out, but as soon as people start doing their own work, they lose the benefits and possibly lose more benefits than they are gaining by working, and they lose their time, right? So it's not incentivizing them to work. The earned income tax credit tries to go up. It actually increases as earned income goes up, and then it plateaus and it goes back down. So if people worked less in 2020 because of the pandemic, there just wasn't any work in 2020, then they want to allow people to still get the benefit of the earned income tax credit, even though they didn't work at all and it wasn't their fault. They want to work, but they couldn't at that point. So they allow people to use the 2019 income if it's higher, which is weird because, again, normally for taxes, you don't want income on the tax return higher because that means you pay more taxes. But with the earned income tax credit, because it's a benefit program, the higher income could actually be beneficial and qualify for more of a refundable tax credit. So again, that's kind of funny. That's kind of weird. Tax software can kind of help you out. It's good because it could be beneficial. They're trying to be helpful here, but it's confusing. So the tax software hopefully can help out to pick out those kind of things that are unique to this year. So some people will also be able to get advance payments of the child tax credit later this year. So they're trying to send out the child tax credit advance payment. So if you get a child tax credit, you got to file to get the child tax credit. And then the IRS is trying to give a prepayment on those, meaning giving the child tax credit for 2021 out earlier to try to help out with that situation. So those who qualify for advance payments just need to file a 2020 tax return. Everyone should consider using Free File, especially those who don't get the full first and second economic impact payments and may be eligible to claim the 2020 recovery rebate credit when they file. So if you didn't get the economic impact payments, then the way to recover that is to file the 2020 tax return. Now, the first two economic impact payments will actually be calculated on the tax return in the form of the recovery rebate credit. The economic impact payments for round 1 and round 2 being prepayments, in essence, of the recovery rebate credit on the tax return. So you'll calculate the recovery rebate credit minus any payments you got, basically. And then if you didn't get any, then you get the full amount that you would have got as a prepayment, but you'll get it in the form of a recovery rebate credit in essence. The third round, the round that's going out now, is not part of the recovery rebate credit in 2020, but the 2020 return will be used as the source for the IRS to send out the prepayment for the third round of the economic impact payment, and most likely any other one if they come up with any other brilliant strategies. And they'll probably be basing it on the 2020 information from there. So this includes people experiencing homelessness. If they are not someone's dependent, they likely still qualify for the recovery rebate credit, even if they have little or no income. they can still use Free File even if their only access to the internet is through a smartphone. Look for a Free File product with, quote, no minimum income, end quote. Individuals who were claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return in 2018 or 2019, but who cannot be claimed as a dependent in 2020, may be eligible for stimulus payments and must file 2020 tax returns to claim a recovery rebate credit. So note that the first two rounds of economic impact payments, if you were a dependent, that kind of limited or often reduced the amount of the payment. Meaning, if you're a dependent but you were over 17, then you didn't get access to the payment, and the person that claimed you as a dependent possibly didn't get any benefit as well. And if you actually filed as independent in 2020, because you're actually independent, we don't want it, but you were dependent when they basically gave the economic impact payment based on the prior year, which would be 2019, but all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you are miraculously not dependent in 2020, and you file your tax return as not dependent, then you might have access to the first and second round recovery rebate credits. Note the third recovery rebate credit doesn't have that issue as much, because the dependents would still get the economic impact payments, but it wouldn't go to the dependent, of course, it would go to the taxpayer. But basically, everyone with a Social Security number gets pretty much the same amount, whether they're dependent or not, even though there's an income limitation. But the first two economic impact payments, 1 and 2, have that kind of issue. So in the case, couples with one spouse who has an ITIN, I-T-I-N, under a new law, a married couple filing a joint return may be eligible for a particular credit when only one spouse has a Social Security number valid for employment. If a couple didn't receive one or both economic impact payments for this reason, they may be eligible to claim the 2020 recovery rebate credit and must file the 2020 tax return. There is an exception if one spouse is a member of the U.S. Armed Forces. Partners with a new qualifying child, some families who had a baby or adopted a child during 2020 didn't receive a first or second economic impact payment for that qualifying child. They may be eligible to claim the 2020 recovery rebate credit and must file a tax return to do that. So obviously, if you had a baby in 2020, congratulations. The IRS wouldn't have picked that up because they would have been looking at 2019 when they send out round 1 and round 2 of the economic impact payments. So you need to file the tax return so that if you want to pick up the amount applied to the qualifying child, and you could file that 2020, and that should give you the ability for the IRS to know about them, to give you any third round economic impact payment, as well as any fourth and 25th and 100th round that could be coming down, later. I don't know what's going to happen later, but they're talking about it. We'll report on it as it happens.